No mai, haere mai, piki mai, kaki mai, na mihi o te pō. Kei aku nui, kei aku rahi, kei aku rangatira. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome everyone. Once again, we're going to have a discussion over the next couple of hours. If you want to get something to eat, have something to drink, that's fine, grab it, sit down. I'm here also as an impartial chair. Of course, as a journalist, as a human being, I've heard of Kashmir. Well, in 70 plus years, it has gone on, and that's one of the things why I'm quite interested in coming to hear things tonight is we hear this word, we hear about this place, yet not many of us will give it a second thought. Tonight we're going to find out why we should be. So we're going to, as I said, we're going to have a series of speakers, and I'd like first of all to welcome and to acknowledge also, of course, Craig Pritchard there, one of the organisers, and his co-organiser to open up our discussion tonight. Could you please welcome Dr. Mohammed Shuar.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good afternoon. This Kashmir problem is very close to my heart. The reason is that these people have been oppressed for far too long, something you won't expect in 21st century. The purpose of this, me and Craig, when we started organizing with the help of all of you, was to have an intellectual discussion. Just all the wise heads getting together and looking into first what this problem is, trying to understand it, because that's the basic step. Understand what this problem is. But then also to find out what the effect of this problem is on the region, how people have suffered, and then also to see how things have become more complicated. A situation which was already so much complicated has been made more complicated by the action of the Indian government on 5th of August 2019. What the impact of that has been on Kashmiris here, then where it is heading, and how do we know that it's heading that way? The impact of this on peace, not only in Kashmir, but also in the whole region, and global peace. And also, after that, I would like this gathering to come up with some solutions, some guidance for humanity, basically, to see, number one, what are possible solutions? Number two, then what can we do here, sitting far away from the conflict zone? What can we do to make sure that we get some peace for those people? And then all these different options put together, then we can probably come up with a summary, a synopsis, and we can share it with all the parties. And send it to our government here and send it to the United Nations. That I would really like all the intellectuals here to focus on and come up with a solution which is fair, a solution which is just, a solution which is peaceful, sustainable, and which is acceptable. First to Kashmiris and then to people around Kashmir. That's what I would expect to get from this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As we heard, I mean, there is a huge historical context to see this debate in, and that is how we're going to start with an historical account of the Kashmir situation. This is from a PhD student at Massey University, Omar Nazir. Welcome.
Tina koto katoa no Kashmir ahua. Mina wahi tapo toko whinua, kina wahi tapo atuora. Kiti mihi mai tamitanga o nā tanakatanga o toko whinua, kiti tamitanga o nā iwi, mitihi atu tangata atuora. Kito tahi tau wiro atu tamitanga huri no itoo. Kia ora. Let me begin today with a straightforward statement. Kashmir is not an India-Pakistan issue. It definitely is not a Hindu-Muslim issue. The longer we continue to operate in such paradigms, the more bitter outcome would be. Kashmir rather is not just an international problem where two nuclear arsenal countries clash, but it's the site of entangled memories, a contested space of oppression and resistance, and above all, a place where millions of people live, breathe, and die. The history of Kashmir is intrinsically tied with post-colonial history of the Indian subcontinent. Before partition of India in 1947, it was a princely state. In spite of the moral and legal ambiguities surrounding accession of Kashmir with the Union of India, which was done against the wishes of the majority of Kashmir's population, Kashmir remains central to India's imagination of its identity. It's widely viewed through a geopolitical framing as an area of strategic significance and as an arena where India contests Pakistan's alleged ambitions to destabilize India. Kashmiris are thus at the receiving end of so-called rational governance by India that is sustained through the politics of power structures and functions through coercion and suppression. This form of governance by India is maintained with prolonged enforcement of undemocratic and unjustifiable laws like PSA, Public Safety Act, AFSPA, Armed Forces Special Powers Act. The Public Safety Act gives the state power to detain anyone for up to 2 years without a trial, while the Armed Forces Special Power Act gives impunity to anyone who is uniformed from legal scrutiny and prosecution for their misdoings. We again here to stand for Kashmir, and we want the discussion to be informative about the troubled history of the place where we come from. Thank you. So our colleague Mohan Datta is the next speaker. He has a recorded message because he had to travel today. He has recorded a message for us. He will speak about the rise of the BJP, the Hindu Nationalist Party in India, and its impacts. So here is Professor Mohan Datta.
If there is one thing that we learn from this history of India, is its active commitment to principles of secularism and syncretism. The principles embodied by Gandhi, Nehru, Ambedkar depict a kind of constitutionalism that have actively put at the forefront the notion of committing the nation to creating an equal space for everyone, irrespective of caste, creed, or religion. This fundamental spirit of secularism that captures the imagination of India and that is inspiration for many constitutions across the world is currently under threat under the ruling configuration of the Bharatiya Janata Party or the BJP. Since coming to power, the BJP has actively played a politics of hate. A politics of hate that has directly targeted India's Muslim minorities. A lot of this politics of hate actually stems from the roots of BJP and its connections to the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh or the RSS. In fact, the current Prime Minister of India, Mr. Narendra Modi, was or is still an RSS ideologue, having been trained and bred in the politics of the RSS. Now you might ask, what is the RSS? The RSS is a right-wing political party which has actively sought to create India in the imagination of a Hindu nation at the cost of its minorities. This kind of politics that is ongoing in India is of much relevance to New Zealand. Especially in the backdrop of the Christchurch attack, New Zealanders have to wonder to what extent do they want to support a politics that is actively committed to hate and that disseminates Islamophobia. We have to actively interrogate the extent to which we enable organizations such as RSS to operate within the boundaries of New Zealand knowing very well that these organizations are committed to an active politics of hate. What then is our commitment to building spaces of dialogue and inclusion, especially in the backdrop of this environment that actively disseminates Islamophobic ideas, beliefs, and value systems? I really hope, as part of this conversation, that we can start interrogating the mainstreaming of the politics of hate that is taking place in India, the ways in which this politics is being exported globally, including to New Zealand, and think really hard about the role that New Zealand politics ought to play in ensuring that we have a discursive space that is on one hand committed to freedom of expression, but on the other hand is actively committed to fighting any kind of hate. Thank you for listening, and I really hope that this is the beginning of a conversation on how to effectively engage India, but how to actually think about what it means to engage with the ideals of equality, of secularism, of socialism and democracy that are embodied in the Indian Constitution. Thank you.
I'd like to invite up now to talk to you Tribhuvan Raina and Sudesh Wasuri, who are members of the Hindu Kashmiri community, for their presentation.
Well, thank you everyone. Thanks for the invitation, Dr. Shoaib and Omar. Thank you for inviting us here. My name is Tribhuvan Raina. I'm a Kashmiri Pandit. I was in Kashmir for 14 years of my life. I was born there. And I have my fellow Kashmiri here as well. But before we get into that, how many are here from Kashmir? Were born there or from Kashmir? We love you as Kashmiris.
We love you too. We love you too.
Thank you. I'm here because I am a Kashmiri Pandit and I have the history back in Kashmir. And I will give you a brief overview of history as well. We believe the world in general, not just Kiwis, you should have the complete narrative, not just from one majority religion, which is Islam in there, but from other minorities as well. Be the Pandits, be it Sikhs, be it Christians, from Kashmir as well. Before all of this crap happened 30 years back, where we were forced to leave Kashmir, we had a term in Kashmir for years called Kashmirian, which Umar will understand very well. What that really meant was Kashmir had a secular fabric, right? A Hindu would go to a Muslim shrine and pray for the well-being of his or her family. And equally, a Kashmiri Muslim will go to a Hindu shrine and pray for his or her family's well-being. We would go to each other's marriages. We would be there, we would stand for each other in death, birth, any celebration, sorrows. So Mark said 70 years, and Omar talked about last 60, 70 years as well. But some of you, at least the Kashmiris, should know the history of Kashmir goes long time back, centuries back. The first history was written in 1500 or so by a person called Kalhan, who was the first historian from Kashmir. It was written in Sanskrit. It was called Rajtanavini. So Kashmir's history is not just last 70 years, it goes centuries back. Hate is not the answer. I completely agree, Umar. Hate, and with Professor Mohan as well. I don't agree with completely his speech, but let's keep that aside. The last era is 1947 to now. And again a Kashmiri Pandit suffered in 1989 to 1990, where we were 400,000. The absolute majority of Pandits were forced to leave Kashmir. And Dr. Sudesh will get into the details, so I won't go in there. Women were raped, again they were raped, gang raped, killed. Men were shot dead because of their religion identity or religious identity. Omar talked about this is not about religion. I agree, Omar. Then why did it happen in 89-90? If this was not about religion, I feel your pain. And whenever a person dies, be irrespective of whatever religion, it's painful.
Good evening, distinguished guests. I would like to thank Professor Craig Pritchard, for my Omar Nazir, and the organizers of this event for giving us this chance to express our views on Kashmir, which of course is close to my heart. Let me introduce myself. My name is Sudesh Wasuri. I was born in Kashmir with ancestral history. Being a son of the soil, I want to ask few questions to everyone present this evening who spoke against the abrogation of the article. Since we have limited time, I'll not go into the genocides that happened in 1989-1990, where Kashmiri Pandits were either killed or were forced to leave Kashmir. And in my view, that was the murder of Kashmiriyat, which Tripp defined Kashmiriyat into his opening remark, or Umar did it earlier. If Article 370 was to protect the demography of Kashmir and Kashmiriyat, why then have Kashmiri Pandits, the aborigines of the land, literally been wiped out of the state and have to take the refuge into other parts of India as refugees? So some stats, I will quickly just. In the British Census of India of 1941, Kashmir registered a Muslim majority population of 77%, a Hindu population of 20%, and others, Buddhists and Sikhs, comprising the remaining 3%. The latest data suggests Kashmiri Pandits' population has reduced to only less than 0.1%. I repeat, 0.1%. I'll go on one step further by pointing out that the minorities in Pakistan, including Hindus, Christians, and others, comprise 22% of the population at the time of partition. Anybody can Google it even. But now have reduced to 3.7%. 3.7%. Due to constant interference, I'm just finishing in a minute and a half, from Pakistan and infiltrating terrorists into the valley for several decades, anti-India sentiments became permanent in the minds of people-loving Kashmiri Muslims. As a result, the ISIS-type Islamic viewpoints were spreading rapidly throughout the state. In fact, ISIS flags were raised on different occasions, despite Indian government efforts to normalize the situation. Finally, to curb those activities, abrogation of Article 370 was much needed. Act by the government of India to stop further ISIS-type Islamization of the state. So questions should be asked, why minorities are disappearing in these countries? In fact, we should organize a symposium debate on it and will urge Massey University to facilitate it. Thanks for your attention.
We're now moving on to what we call Kashmiri lived experiences, and we're going to start off with Sadaf Nakash.
I'm not here to make any politically correct statements or any theories. I grew up in Indian-occupied Kashmir, and as I spent my life there as a child and as an adult. So my experiences are as real as anybody's who has lived in Kashmir during the period of occupation under Indian rule. I will recall some experience of growing as a child under militarized occupation. So my biggest fear as a child was an Indian army man, fully equipped with automatic weapons, marching the streets of Kashmir. And every place, because you already know that it's the highest militarized zone in the world, and this was common occurrence where they would stop us when we go to school. And in this picture, top right up there, this is a small child being humiliated by an Indian army man by asking him to do sit-ups. The worst memory is of the crackdowns that happened, sometimes at night, sometimes early mornings. They will come and barge into your homes, take the men away, and they will literally make us sit like that. And I have sat like that in one of those crackdowns. And I remember in those crackdowns, they will line these men up, and there would be an informant. And those informants were local people, both Muslims and Hindus. They were local informants. And they would tip them off that this person is involved in such and such activity, and he would be taken away and killed in an what they call as extrajudicial killing. Now talk about something, daily newspaper that will come to our home every day. And some days I would happen to see that newspaper. The newspapers were full of graphic images of the men who were killed, of children, or of women who were raped. And in one of those instances, this is one of the papers in which an infant was killed by Indian Army. All these people here, this is what a newspaper in Kashmir looked in those days. I'll not talk about the massacres as much, but there have been massacres after massacre under Dogra rule, under Indian occupation. And please don't, this is not a typo. I've taken it from London Times, and it had happened during that period, which Rana described that it was relatively a nice period for us, but wasn't a good period for us. It happened during that time. And finally, we have been denied our right to self-determination. These are the quotes from the first Prime Minister of independent India. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Next to talk to us is Clark Kashkari.
Assalamu alaikum, may peace be upon you all. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
We can't see you.
Oh, the light on? Oh. I just want to share my experience. I'm a born Kashmiri, I'm a proud New Zealander, and I want to share with you my life history and how I became. I won't read the details, but standing here as a proud New Zealander, I'm going to hang my head in shame because I feel I live in a country which I believe is a democratic country that gives us every right, and our Parliament kicked us out because there was a lobby to kick us out of the Parliament, to bring us here, to disrupt our event. And that event was disrupted by a foreign government who put this pressure on New Zealand government and Massive University. I spend 20 to 30 hours every week in this country, in my country, to improve the human rights, interaction with people, improve social cohesion. And today I will ask my government, I will go back to the Prime Minister, I will go back to our Speaker and all MPs, and I urge you all to do that and ask them a question. It is our fundamental right, and what he did, or what our Speaker did under the pressure of Indian government is unacceptable. I just want to talk about when I was growing up. When I was growing up, I was growing in fear. As my sister Sarah talked about, that fear that came from a massive spy network that was established in Kashmir to keep an eye on all of us. There was police that was there. There was army, regular army, the world's most militarized zone. There was government of convenience. So when Indian government felt to put somebody in power, they would put them in power. When they decided to put them out of power, they would remove them from the power. There was a total deficit of trust between people of Kashmir and Indian government. So there is actually a whole lot of stuff. And I'll quote here as Dulat. He's actually head of intelligence for India. He's served in equivalent of GCSB and equivalent of New Zealand Secret Services. And basically he says that there was a massive in his book, and the book is there called The Vajpayee Years. And you just look at it and it talks about there was a massive spy network. And Hindus that were killed during that, and there is 192 Pandits that were killed. They actually were a large number of them were spies, and that's the intelligence talking about. So resentments against India, enormous resentments. Why? There's a constant suffering, cruelty on people of Kashmir, degradation of status. I mean, we didn't even acknowledge India, Kashmir to be part of India. But even going by their statement, semi-autonomous state, which India only had control over 3 things. So we had our own Prime Minister, President, Supreme Court, our own laws. India had no rights in Kashmir except for defense, foreign affairs, currency, and telecommunications. I've got actually some figures here that Human Rights Tribunal has talked about, and it was the massacres in Kashmir in relation to the sort of graves of people that were unmarked graves, and people were actually killed. And as soon as those numbers, they stopped allowing them to do any further investigation. I actually just want to highlight that all non-Kashmiris were asked to leave Kashmir. Again, the same rhetoric of India. Major terrorist threat. Pakistan is sending us all sort of these people in. People locked in their homes. India brought constitutional changes to make demographic changes in Kashmir. And recent statement from Indian ambassador in US was recorded in one of the Kashmiri Pandit party talking about we need to use the same formula that's a formula we're following as what Israel did in Palestine. And India talks about development. I challenge them, their development, that is actually their average. Talk about their lowest. This is not the lowest, this is average India's metrics. So they need to look at what their lowest are and try and improve their development before they come and develop us. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Dr. Yasir Altaf from the Pakistan-administered Jammu and Kashmir, and he is president of the Victoria University Muslim Students Association.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. Thanks a lot to the organizers of today's event on behalf of the suffering Kashmiris. Mothers die waiting for their arrested kids to come back. Wives turn into widows in a blink of an eye, and many kids get deprived of the affection of their father as they are either being killed or arrested for their whole life. Those people have been facing various draconian laws such as Public Safety Act and Armed Forces Special Powers Act that allow the Indian security forces, the forces of the so-called biggest democracy of the world, to arrest or kill anyone in the interest of maintaining peace. The famous Jamia Masjid of Srinagar is currently inaccessible to the Muslim worshippers most of the Fridays. These are not the excerpts from some novel. I would invite the audience to read the 2018 Human Rights Watch report in this regard. All this being said, I regret to say that the role of the United Nations towards solving this issue peacefully has been deplorable. Kashmiris were given the right to self-determination by the UN Security Council 72 years ago. That has never been fulfilled. Why around 14 million people are being denied this basic right? The Kashmiris expect the international community to be just toward them. Lastly, I would like to talk to the government and the people of New Zealand. It has been nice to see here the protest for animal rights. Let me tell you that the Kashmiris have been suffering worse than the animals for the last many decades. We also witness the feminism movement is at best in New Zealand. Let me share with you the miseries of the Kashmiri women. The human rights reports speak all about it. We witness that the children in New Zealand have every kind of legal protection. Let me tell you about the horrible use of pellets in the valley that has blinded thousands of Kashmiris, including women and children. We urge you people to stand with the Kashmiris, support their right to self-determination, whether they want to accede to India, Pakistan, or they remain independent. Let me assure you on the Azad Kashmir side, at least there is no option of acceding to India. Kashmir needs your attention. Thank you.
I'd now like to invite to talk to us Dr. Mustafa Farouk, the President of the Federation of Islamic Associations.
Kia ora koutou katoa. I just want to thank the organizers for the opportunity to come and say some few words here. When I was given this invitation, I told the person who extended the invitation to me that I will be coming here today not because majority of Kashmiri people are Muslims and that I'm a Muslim. I'm coming here simply because of social justice. Recently, we are all aware of what happened in Christchurch, where 51 members of our own Muslim community were massacred when they were performing their prayers. And we also can remember the reaction. Everybody in New Zealand came together, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, every faith and non-faith group came together and mourned with us and cried with us. They didn't come for any reason other than the fact that they knew injustice was committed, to our community, and they came and shared that with us. There was no religion, there was no color, there was no race involved in that at all. So, I have faith in New Zealand. I have faith that New Zealanders, in spite of our own population, in spite of our size and the distance, that we can make a lot of changes. That's why I'm here today to support justice. Not to just support Kashmiris because they are Muslims, or to say something against India because they are not, Muslims. No, it's just because I believe in New Zealand, justice can start from here and spread to other places. Clearly, from an Islamic perspective, we know that when it comes to justice, that we should look beyond anything to do with whether we look alike, whether we have the same belief. Justice doesn't look at belief, doesn't look at color, doesn't look at where you come from. Justice is justice, and justice has to be, done. And that's why, I repeated this. Also, we cannot break our contract. No matter what happens, we cannot break our contract. These are just these two verses, that buttress what I'm trying to say, and I believe I'm speaking to, New Zealanders here because we feel very strongly about it. I would like to conclude by acknowledging our Prime Minister, Right Honorable Jacinda Ardern. Recently, when she was attending a summit in New York, I wrote her an email, and I asked her I wrote her a letter, and in that letter I asked her to please bring up the issue of the injustice in Kashmir when she met Modi. So when she came back, she sent me a reply, and in that reply, she said when she was in New York, she met with Khan of Pakistan and Modi of India. And I will just quote from that email, from that letter. She says, New Zealand wants to see peace and prosperity in Kashmir, and the rights and welfare of its citizens protected and promoted. I was able to convey that to both Prime Ministers. So I am urging you all here as New Zealanders to stand for justice and fairness, regardless of where and for who or against who. Thank you very much.
Our final speaker before the discussion is Michael Wood. He is the Labour MP for Mount Roskill. He is also the Under-Secretary to the Minister of Ethnic Communities.
Kia ora koutou katoa, and I do acknowledge you for putting together this symposium. While I can't come here and necessarily give you all of the answers or responses that you would perhaps want to receive, and that's because I'm not necessarily empowered on the spot here this evening to make policy for the government in terms of issues such as this, it is my view very strongly as a parliamentarian that as citizens of New Zealand, it is your right and a right to be encouraged that you do come together to raise issues that are important to you, to engage in constructive dialogue, to have debate and ensure that your issues and your concerns are heard. And that is something that we as parliamentarians really do want to affirm. And that's why it was important for Deborah and I to be here this evening to hear from you. And in that spirit, I want to acknowledge you as well for being inclusive and for also having the Hindu Kashmiri voice being heard at this symposium. And I think that is appropriate, and I commend you for it. When a clerk asked me to say a few words this evening, he asked that I might focus briefly on the particular issues that arise in respect of regional and international stability arising out of the situation in Kashmir. And I think probably at first blush it's fairly obvious what some of those issues and concerns will be. As has been canvassed, Kashmir is one of the most militarised, if not the most militarised zone in the world. It sits within a region that has had its fair share of political and military instability. This is a place in which there has been a series of hot wars, of active conflict over the past 50 years that have not been fully resolved. And of course we are talking about a region in which we have two significant nuclear armed powers, in fact more than that as well, because as we know China has interests in Kashmir and the surrounding region as well. And in fact, if you speak to many international security experts, even before events took the turn that they did in August of this year, and you ask them what is the area of the world in which you are most concerned about the possibility for significant conflict and in fact nuclear conflict, the answer that many of them will have given you was Kashmir. And so it is of interest to New Zealand, and I think all countries of the world, that this situation does get resolved in a way that is peaceful, and that is peaceful in a sustainable way as well. Because while all of the issues that have been canvassed tonight, and I acknowledge there are different perspectives, remain unresolved, and all of those factors are at play, there is a serious risk of regional instability and a serious risk of conflict that could be potentially devastating, not just for the region but for the world more widely. Final thing that I just want to note is that I know that this is an issue which is deeply felt by many people here and in the New Zealand community more broadly, and that there are people here who have friends and loved ones back in Kashmir, and that the period over the last 5 months has been a deeply distressing and anxious one for many of you, that the effect of the blackout has meant that you have been fearful, that you just haven't known what is happening to people that you care about. And again, I can't come to you with a simple answer or some soothing words there, other than to say that I can understand that that must feel very hurtful and very distressing, and that the prayers of many of us who want a peaceful and just solution are with you. Can I thank again the organisers of tonight's event for pulling this together and initiating discussion and doing it in a peaceful and constructive way. That is so important, and it is something that I deeply respect as well. Thank you very much for having me here this evening. Shukran.
So how do we, in this little part of the world, how do we achieve any change? What can we do? So we're opening up now to discussion from any...
So when you say you were driven out, who do you hold responsible for that, for the migration of Kashmiris? Is that the population? Because I personally believe that me, my family, or my people in the community were responsible for it. We were persecuted ourselves. So do you think it was a failure of the state, the central government? If that is true, then your grievances would be with the government of India or then state government, not with the people of Kashmir who didn't have any power to do anything whatsoever. Yes, and militant groups. No, not
Correct.
the
We are in agreement. No, I don't blame you, or he doesn't blame a Kashmiri Muslim for it. We blame the senseless people who use the power of gun to kill us.
And you do agree that the state and the central government failed to protect
It's
you at
becoming
the
a
time?
unidirectional. I think Mark wants to avoid that. I'm more than happy we can have this conversation afterwards.
I think what I think, it is the extremism in Kashmir which has driven us out. All right, whether you agree with me or not, and some of Kashkari was showing those stats. Where from these stats came? If Kashmir was under the occupation for last 72 years, where from those good stats came from?
We saw two sides to this. And what I am thinking about is, on the one side, people describe what is happening right now. People are suffering, and they have been suffering for 70 years. And then you extended the history to a few hundred years ago. And then talked about how people were forced converted to another religion. Let's take it even back to 1 million years ago, when human beings was first came to this world. They were all one family. There was no problem at all. Then some of them were forced converted to Hinduism. Some of them were forced converted to Judaism. And that's how all the religions were formed. So if we go back to how we all lived peacefully when Adam was born, then we can take it that far.
Let's take it that far.
The problem is,
we don't have time. The
problem is,
answer you in every argument.
The problem is
we don't have time.
I'm not from Kashmir, I'm not Muslim, I'm not any of this, but I am from South Africa. And unfortunately, I have seen this conversation happening over and over and over again. And I think part of the difficulty is that when we refuse to listen and we carry our emotions into these conversations, we are not helping anyone. I came here to be educated so that when I go home to advise my government, I must be informed. I want to be honest with you, I'm leaving here more confused than educated. Right? And I don't think this is what the seminar was intended to do.
But what concerned me was the comment made by you that there has been interference here, where you've been disallowed to have this forum in the right place. That concerns me a lot. That is when we see injustice happening. I don't know whether that happened or not, but I'd like to know more about that. Okay. Because we should stop that in the first instance. We have a right to that place. We should go down there and make use of that place. Now that is happening in New Zealand. It's not happening in Kashmir. Yeah. It's happening just down there. Now that is what I need to know about more. If you can help me.
We are a small country, but we have a hugely important voice. But I don't believe that the common person on the New Zealand street knows about Kashmir. I wrote a letter to the Dawn Post a couple of months ago about Kashmir. That particular day, I had a doctor's appointment. I was sitting there waiting for my turn, and the doctor's nurse looked at me and she said, "Oh, this is your letter. Thank you for writing. I did not know about Kashmir. Your letter has brought the problem to my attention." That is what is needed first. We need to educate the people of New Zealand the problem in Kashmir.
The media is not at all helping us talk about Kashmir. That is very important. A simple thing about what is Kashmir, what is the cause? It's a humanity cause, and it doesn't have any boundaries in it. And I think we have full right that we should tell, and the other people should have courage to listen about it. This is very important.
So you think that we don't even, there's so little reportage already?
I tried to write an article in Stock New Zealand, and they refused to publish it.
There was an Israeli embassy in New Zealand. I was with the Palestinian cause. We had no show. Nobody was listening to us. Nobody. Media was controlled. Media was very, very pro-Israeli. And we said, what the hell are we going to do about it? And that was in the 80s. By 2000, there was an embassy here of the Palestinians. By 2004, New Zealand was actually voting, advocating for rights of the Palestinians in the UN. So there can be a lot that can be done. And the key lesson learned from that, and also the Amanda movement here, the South African movement, they listened to us in New Zealand. What can be done in New Zealand? Exactly what you're doing now. This kind of seminars we used to have at universities with the young leaders. This kind of seminars we used to have with journalists. And on the basis of that, gradually things started to move.
I think it is important that there is a lot of feeling against what the Parliament decided. I think we need to probably write a letter to the Parliament just expressing our concerns that people were very unhappy of this change of venue at the last minute. And also if we could be given an opportunity to hold similar meetings, because we need to hold other meetings also in the Parliament. So do you all agree with that?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
Now, at the end, I would like to thank all of you for coming this evening. I will specifically like to thank you, Mark, for coming and I am very thankful to Craig Pritchard for and I know it was very, very hard, and there was a lot of resistance, but you put up with it. I'm very, very thankful to you and all the Kashmiri community. I'm very thankful to members of Parliament, especially the two members who came in here, Michael Wood and Deborah Russell. I'm very, very thankful to them that in spite of huge pressure that many people succumbed to, they didn't, and they still came. I am also very thankful to all the diplomats, especially Embassy of South Africa, Hungary, Swiss Embassy, and also Malaysian Embassy, Turkish Embassy, High Commission of Pakistan, and did I miss any? All of you, thank you very much for coming. I'm also thankful to Federation of Islamic Association of New Zealand and the President coming here and talking on this moment. And I'm also thankful to all the community leaders. I'm thankful to you, the Kashmiri Hindus, coming and joining hands with us. And even though there was a difference of opinion, a nice discussion, which is really, really good.